Huh? Okay. Okay. If everybody could find a seat. Okay. Thank you for coming this evening. As a reminder, if you plan to speak tonight for public comment, you must sign up. The sign-up sheet is right outside the door here in the lobby. If you plan to speak and have not signed up yet, please do so now. Good evening. My name is Michelle Gordon. I'm the County Administrator for Washington County's Board of County Commissioners, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here with us today. While we are excited to have you all here tonight, I would like to first take an opportunity to introduce and thank our Board of County Commissioners for all that they do for Washington County. I'll start with President John Barr, Commission Vice President Jeff Klein, Commissioner Randy Wagner, Commissioner Wayne Kiefer, and Commissioner Derek Harvey. Okay. Before we get started, I'd again like to extend a warm welcome to all of you and thank everyone for joining us this evening for the fiscal year 25 public hearing for the budget. I would also like to thank our county staff for their dedication and hard work. I would like to thank our department heads and elected officials. They have spent a significant amount of time and placed considerable thought into operating and capital requests, revenue and expenditure estimates, historical trending and analyses, prioritizing and balancing the fiscal year 25 budget for Washington County, its residents, businesses, and visitors. We look forward to hearing your comments and thoughts about the proposed budget. This public hearing is being held specifically related to the proposed fiscal year 25 tax rate and to consider the county's proposed fiscal year 25 budget. This evening, we will provide an overview of the funding sources and allocation of resources that are proposed for fiscal year 25. And the following presentation is an overview of proposed fiscal year 25 budget and proposed fiscal year 25 tax rates. Copies of the Citizen's Guide to the Budget are available in the lobby this evening. It looks like this. They may also be found on the county's website at www.washco-md.net. This Citizen's Guide to the Budget contains a budget overview, a general fund summary, a debt summary, and expenditures by function, among other things. Please take a moment to view it online or download the document. This document is created to enhance our understanding of how Washington County is organized, the services provided by the county, and the funding sources for those services. Staff strives to deliver the citizens of Washington County with the highest quality of services as efficiently and economically as possible, making every dollar count. The county provides a variety of services that includes law enforcement, emergency services, and emergency management to protect our residents and visitors. The county provides for planning and zoning, permits and inspections, and road maintenance and highways, transit services for residents, environmental management, and amenities in our county parks and recreation to make sure that Washington County is the ideal place to live, work, and play. As you can see, the needs of the citizens of Washington County are at the forefront of all that we do at county government. Ensuring that the county's scarce resources are allocated in a fiscally responsible manner, while at the same time understanding and recognizing the needs of our constituents, are the driving forces behind our budgetary decisions. We thank you for the opportunity to serve you. County government focuses on 5 priority areas: education, which includes Washington County Public Schools, libraries, and our Hagerstown Community College; public safety for our law enforcement, emergency communications, emergency medical services, and our fire departments; economic development to ensure smart growth in our community; human services and infrastructure for our facilities, equipment, and road needs. Staff and county officials concentrate on these priority areas during the budgetary process as we seek to responsibly allocate county funds. For fiscal year 25, the proposed budget includes no proposed tax rate changes for either real property or for our income tax rates. The real property tax rate for fiscal year 25 will remain the same at 92.8 cents per $100 of assessed value, and the proposed income tax rate will remain the same at 2.95%. The proposed fiscal year 25 budget is balanced based on these proposed tax rates. I'd like to thank Kelsey Mace, our Chief Financial Officer, Kim Edlin, the Director of Budget and Finance, Deb Dickey, our Budget Analyst, and all of our Budget and Finance team for the work done to complete our budget. At this time, I will turn the presentation over to Kelsey Mace, our Chief Financial Officer, for an overview of the proposed fiscal year 25 budget for both our operating and capital budgets. Again, thank you for joining us tonight for the fiscal year 25 budget presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. Each year, the budget process begins in November and is typically completed in May. There are three major phases to the budget process. The development phase begins with departments, elected officials, and outside agencies as they submit their budget requests for the upcoming fiscal year. The next phase includes a detailed review, modifications are made based on available resources and board priorities, and lastly, the budget is formally adopted. Financial forecasts, economic trends, policy review, and citizen input are all part of this process. As many of you are familiar with the county's largest fund, our general fund, since this is where taxpayer dollars are budgeted and accounted for, but you may not know that the county budgets for and operates a total of 21 funds with more than 150 departments. Each year, county personnel analyze, review, and prioritize the budget for over 2,800 account combinations before presenting the proposed budget to the Board of County Commissioners. The proposed operating budget for fiscal year 25 is $368.3 million. The proposed capital budget is $65.8 million for a total proposed budget of $434.1 million. The general fund represents 69% of the total budget and 82% of operating funds. The general fund has a proposed FY25 budget of $300.6 million. A 5-year general fund budget history is shown in the top graph and represents an average increase of 5.19%. The proposed capital budget for fiscal year 25 is $65.8 million. A 5-year history of the capital budget is shown in the bottom graph. This budget fluctuates more than our operating budgets and varies primarily due to construction schedules and the expectation of grants and other side funding that is secured, such as developer contributions. This graph represents a 5-year history of general fund revenue budgets. The main sources of revenue for the county are real estate and local taxes, which average 95% of general fund revenue over the last 5 years. This slide provides an overview of the proposed general fund revenues for fiscal year 25. Property tax is estimated at $152.4 million, or 51% of the total budget, and is based on assessed values provided by the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. Income tax makes up the next largest portion of the budget at $121.4 million, or 40%, and is based on past performance and forecasted trends. Other local taxes, which include recordation, admissions and amusement, and trailer tax, make up 3%, or $8.3 million of the budget. Charges for services and grants for operations make up the final 4%, or $13.8 million of the budget. This slide represents where the increases in revenue are projected to occur. Revenues increased $19.6 million over the FY24 budget. Real and personal property tax increased $9 million, or 6.3%. As mentioned before, the real property tax rate is proposed to remain the same as FY24 at 92.8 cents per $100 of assessed value. Income tax increased $4.7 million, or 4%. Included in the income tax budget is $2.4 million for the disparity grant. And as previously mentioned, the income tax rate is proposed to remain the same as FY24 at 2.95%. Interest income increased $2.9 million, or 150%. The latest economic forecasts predict that only a modest drop in rates in the short term, and while budgetary increase is 150%, the proposed interest budget is 40% less than anticipated FY24 revenue. 4.2 million increase for the recording of in-kind contributions per GASB requirements. In-kind contributions are non-cash transactions and have an associated expense budget. And the last item I want to highlight for revenues is a $900,000 increase for 911 fees. This increase is based on the increase to the 911 fee from 75 cents per bill per month to $1.25 per bill per month that was approved by the Board of County Commissioners on March 26, 2024. This graph represents a 5-year history of general fund expenditure budgets. Education and public safety are the largest expense categories for the general fund, which averaged 71% of expenditures over the last 5 years. Represented here is an overview of expenditures. For fiscal year 25, education and public safety activities combined represent 70% of the budget, or $209.4 million. Education includes funding for Washington County Public Schools, Hagerstown Community College, and your local libraries. Funding for Washington County Public Schools represents the single largest expenditure at $110.2 million, or 37% of the general fund budget. Public safety includes funding for police, emergency services, and 911 communications. This slide represents where the increases in expenditures are proposed. Included in these increases are $1.1 million more than what the state mandated maintenance of effort requires for Washington County Public Schools. $6.3 million was included for multiple wage and benefit enhancements, including a step in COLA for county employees, revisions to the civilian employee salary scale, and a COLA for retirees. $1 million for the next phase of the Emergency Medical Services Transition Plan. $121,000 to increase direct allocations to volunteer fire and rescue companies from $105,000 to $110,000. $4.2 million for the recording of in-kind contributions. $2.5 million more to be contributed to the capital plan. And additional funding for outside agencies, including a 3% increase for the Museum of Fine Arts, 10% increase for the Commission on Aging, and $200,000 more for community funding grants. There were some agencies that did not receive an increase but remained flat funded. Difficult decisions were made during the balancing process to ensure that expenditures are growing at the same or at a similar pace as revenue growth. Although in some cases we were not able to fully fund the FY25 requests due to budget constraints, funding in most cases increased over the prior year. In other cases, funding is higher than state mandated amounts or remain flat. The highway fund is budgeted for separately from the general fund and is one of our larger funds with a proposed budget of $13.9 million. It is primarily supported by the general fund with an appropriation of $10.4 million. Anticipated highway user revenue for fiscal year 25 is $3 million, reflecting a $500,000 increase from FY24 anticipated funds. Overall, the highway budget increased $872,000, or 6.7% over the FY24 budget. Main contributors to the increase were wage and benefit increases and inflationary increases for materials and supplies and contracted tree removal services along county rights-of-way. The county has 10 other governmental funds with a total proposed budget of $11.4 million. New to the budget this year is the Emergency Services Billing Fund and the Foreign Trade Zone Fund. Overall, governmental funds increased $2.5 million over FY24. The largest increase was for the Land Preservation Fund in the amount of $1.3 million. Non-major governmental funds are supported primarily with restricted taxes, fees, and grants, which make up 90% of their budget. General fund support only makes up 7% of their budget. The FY25 budget reflects an increase in anticipated grant funding for continued land preservation efforts, an increase in federal grant funding for the Metro Planning Organization, billing and collection of medical transport revenue as part of the EMS transition plan, and the collection of fees related to the foreign trade zone. The county has 5 enterprise funds, which include the airport, transit, Black Rock Golf Course, solid waste, and water quality. The total proposed FY25 budget for enterprise funds is $42.4 million. This reflects an increase of $3 million, or 7.6%. Water quality funds include the Utility Admin Fund, Water Fund, Sewer Fund, and Pretreatment Fund. The proposed FY25 budget for these total $22.9 million. Costs increased $1 million over FY24, mainly due to wage and benefit increases and inflationary increases for electricity to the various plants and pump stations. Solid Waste Fund proposed FY25 budget is $10.7 million. Costs increased $818,000 over FY24, mainly due to wage and benefit increases and increases in debt service related to leased equipment. The Golf Course Fund proposed FY25 budget is $1.5 million. Costs increased $144,000 over FY24, mainly due to the wage and benefit increases, as well as increase in debt service for leased golf courses and inflationary increases in electricity. The Airport Fund proposed FY25 budget is $3.7 million. Cost increased $620,000 over fiscal year '24, mainly due to wage and benefit increases and an increased appropriation for capital funds. And lastly, the Transit Fund proposed FY25 budget is $3.6 million. Cost increased $455,000 over FY24, mainly due to wage and benefit increases and inflationary increases in fuel and electricity. Enterprise funds are supported by user fees. User fees represent 62% of budgeted revenues for fiscal year '25. The budget reflects a proposed increase in water rates of 5.6%, proposed increase in sewer rates of 6%, and an increase in T-hanger rates at the airport of 4%. Grants and other miscellaneous revenues represent 20% of the budget and increase 9.4% over FY24. The planned use of fund balance reserve represents 10% of the budget and reflects the use of $3.1 million more than FY24. Lastly, the general fund support represents 6% of the budget, which is a decrease of $926,000 or 27%. In fiscal year '25, $487,000 will support solid waste programs that do not generate revenue. $786,000 will support stormwater and watershed operations. $176,000 will support water fund operations. $901,000 will support transit operations, and $113,000 will support Black Rock Golf Course operations. Capital budgeting is a critical component in serving our citizens. The FY25 capital budget totals $65.8 million, and the proposed 10-year plan totals $624.8 million. This slide shows the funding sources that will be used. The FY25 budget assumes issuing $13 million in tax-supported bonds and $5.5 million in self-supported bonds, receiving $7.8 million from the general fund, and using $12.5 million of capital reserves. Grants and contributions represent 32.6% of the budget at $21.5 million. This slide represents the breakdown of what types of projects will be funded in the FY25 capital plan. Education represents the largest investment with 23% of the FY25 budget, or $14.8 million, and includes projects for Washington County Public Schools, Hagerstown Community College, and the library system. 20% is for improvements to roads, bridges, and drainage. 14% for public safety, 12% for the airport, 11% for parks and recreation, 10% for general government, 6% for solid waste, 3% for water quality, and 1% for transit. Shown here are highlights of the major projects being funded in the FY25 10-year capital plan. The capital plan provides for 2 replacement elementary schools, improvements and extensions of Eastern Boulevard and Halfway Boulevard, planning funds for the future of the courthouse, relocation of patrol services offices and improvements at the detention center, finishing the P25 radio communication system upgrade, the next phase of the Public Safety Training Center, which include the defensive driving track and the tactical village, planning for the next upgrade of the Smithsburg wastewater treatment plant, replacement of the air traffic control tower at the airport, completion of the rehabilitation of runway 220, the rehabilitation of taxiways A and F, renovations of the Administrative and Student Affairs Building and the Advanced Technology Center at HCC, and the constructions of cells 5 and 8 to expand the landfill. The county currently holds an AA+ bond rating from rating agencies. This rating is extremely important for the county's ability to secure the best interest rate possible when using bonds. This rating provides confidence to investors and other stakeholders as it represents our solid financial position, strong fiscal policies, and the economy in Washington County is stable. And that concludes the presentation of the FY25 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. That concludes the Budget and Finances staff presentation of the fiscal year 25 operating and capital budgets. I'd like to thank you for attending this evening. At this time, we will begin the public comment portion of the public hearing. I'd like to invite our county commissioners to come up to the front, the head of the room. When President Barr begins the hearing, he will have a few announcements. President Barr will have the public comment sign-up sheet list to call the names of our speakers. The microphone for public comment is in the middle of the aisle here. As President Barr calls your name, please make your way to the microphone and wait on deck or in line as the next person. Once the person before you has finished speaking, you can then move to the microphone and it'll be your turn. As a reminder, public comment is limited to 3 minutes. If you miss the buzzer, we do have staff on hand to make sure that to remind you that it's time to finish up your comments when your time is up. I'd like to thank you for being considerate of everyone's time. And at this time, I'll turn it over to President Barr for his opening remarks.
Thank you, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming out this evening and showing support and participation in our annual budget presentation. I'm going to go a little bit off script, if that's okay. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to my fellow commissioners for all their hard work, their camaraderie, their participation. I think we collectively, we serve on 40-some boards and commissions on top of our weekly responsibilities of commissioners, and we collaborate, we work together, and I just want to say thank you to each one of them here publicly this evening. The other thing is thank you, Michelle Gordon, our county administrator. She works tirelessly to keep us in line, and thank you very much. And one more thing, if I can, I know I get in trouble for singling folks out, but Dawn Marcus, our county clerk, and Michelle Preby, our office executive, are just phenomenal. They keep us in line, they keep us scheduled, they keep us moving, and thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to show up at work every day, and you make that very pleasurable. So thank you very much. My prepared statements for this evening are, this is a public hearing concerning the proposed tax rates in county budget. We will now hear public comment, and the hearing will proceed in the following manner. We will take comments in the order in which individuals have signed in to speak. If you wish to speak but haven't yet signed in, please do so out in the lobby. Individuals will be allowed to a maximum of 3 minutes to testify. This is our opportunity to hear your thoughts on the county's budget. It is not an interactive dialogue or a question and answer session. In the interest of time, if you agree with the position of someone who has previously testified, you may simply identify yourself and state that you agree with a prior speaker. We will then move on to the next speaker. You may only speak once during this evening. I'll call 2 names at a time so that while a person is speaking, the next person can be making his or her way to the microphone. Please be respectful and use appropriate decorum, and applause and other outbursts serve only to prolong this hearing. We thank you for actively participating in this civic process. So with that, I think I have the list over here.
It's being delivered to you.
We have the list.
It's being delivered. We're gonna do this, isn't it?
Okay.
Did you? So we want to do the invocation and prayer.
Michelle, we didn't do the invocation with the pledge. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We, part of our procedure here this evening, we did have to give an invocation and a pledge of allegiance. So if we'll stand and bow in an attitude of prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this time this evening to participate in county government. Lord, direct us, guide us, and use us for thy service. May we be ever mindful of the needs of others and for the well-being and betterment of our community. Direct us, guide us, and use us. May we honor you and please you in all that's said and done here this evening. For it's in your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, first up is Paulie Ward, and on deck is Dave Williams.
Paulie Ward, Cedar Lawn, Habestown, 217-4. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed county commissioners, I come before you today as a senior and ADA ambassador to advocate for the cause that touches the very heart of our community. We, our seniors, caregivers, and those living with disabilities. As stewards of this county, it is our responsibility to ensure that every member of the community is cared for, valued, and empowered to live a dignified life. In our county, there are hundreds among us who are unserved, silently struggling with the challenges of aging, caregiving responsibilities, or disabilities. These individuals are our neighbors, our friends, and our members. They have contributed to the fabric of our society, and now it is our duty to honor their contributions by providing them with the support they need. By allocating funds and supporting the Commission on Aging budget specifically for seniors, caregivers, and individuals with disabilities, we are not just investing in programs and services. We are investing in compassion and empathy and in the fundamental principle of inclusivity. A budget dedicated to this cause will enable us to maintain essential services such as Meals on Wheels, home care assistance, respite care for caregivers, and programs fostered socialization and mental well-being. Moreover, investing in the well-being of seniors, caregivers, and those with disabilities is not just a moral imperative, it is also an economic necessity. By providing adequate support, we can help seniors and the ADA residents all. No one should wait over 4 months for an appointment. No one should wonder where their next meal is going to come from. Certainly not medically homebound seniors. You gentlemen have the power to make an impact in this community. I urge each of you to consider the faces behind the numbers, the stories behind the statistics. Let us not turn blind eye to those in need within our community. Let us demonstrate our commitment to compassion and justice by supporting a budget that prioritizes the well-being of our seniors, caregivers, and individuals with disabilities. Together, let us make a difference that reverberates through generations, creating a county that is truly inclusive and supportive of all its members. Thank you.
Next is Dave Williams. On deck is Thomas Roof.
Good evening, Commissioners. 5 years ago in 2019, 3 of you were also serving as commissioners. 2 of you recognized that the county needed more funds to be able to hire full-time firefighters because the volunteer fire companies desperately needed help. 2 of you had the political courage to raise the local income tax rate from 2.8% to 3.2% to pay those salaries. You did the right thing, and your continuing commitment to public safety is exemplified by the building that we're in here tonight. This year, courage is required once again to raise the funds needed to support our schools, who happen to be the county's largest employer and serve 22,000 children, and our seniors, the fastest growing population group in the county. Homes won't burn down because schools and seniors are underfunded, but lives will be impacted forever. The needs are real. You've heard about them over and over throughout this year's budget process, and I've spoken with you myself many times about those needs. But there is one need that I want to remind you of, and that is that a 1.01% increase of the school budget will not come close to covering the impact of inflation. Now, I realize the only good time to raise taxes is when there are good reasons. This year, you have good reasons, just as you had good reasons back in 2019. I'm willing to pay my share. Please raise the local income tax rate to 3.2% so we have the funds to better address the needs of our county. And as a bonus, we can take full advantage of the disparity grant for as long as that grant's available. Now, my comments tonight and my comments that I've made to you over the past weeks and months are based on my assumption that you want to better fund the schools and the seniors, but you just don't have the money. My fear is that in spite of all the budget presentations and testimony that you'll hear, you don't believe that the schools and seniors really need more funds or even deserve more funds. If you can't find room in the budget to better support our schools and seniors, and you're not willing to raise taxes to make room in the budget, please at least be transparent and tell us why. Thank you.
Okay, Thomas Roof and Linda Ebersole is on deck.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here to speak as a senior citizen of Washington County, also as a parent of a son with disabilities, and also as someone who has served on the Commission on Aging Advisory Board for 9 years. I've been coming to these meetings over the last decade. The outcome has been the same every time, speaking on behalf of raising the tax rate so that we can get the benefits of the disparity grant. To me, spending just little money relatively and getting so much money in return is a financial no-brainer. I just don't get it. I also don't understand, having worked and been at the senior centers personally, and having served on a number of different organizations in this county the last decade as a volunteer, I see the needs, and I know a lot of the people in the county who I believe really do care about the seniors who paid their taxes all over the years. That's why we can do this here today. And for all the children who are coming along, who we all know have had a very difficult time since COVID, as have their teachers. I think most people in Washington County are good-hearted, would not really mind a very small increase so that we could reap millions of dollars to cover some more services that are not shrinking, but in fact growing. As I said, I've been coming here for 10 years. Each year, I hope the outcome will be different.
Linda Ebersole, and on deck is Dale Williams.
Good evening. The Black Fly Control Pilot Program was implemented in August 2017 after numerous engagements by affected citizens with the state of Maryland and local politicians. Since that time, most residents in the southern Washington County region have noted marked improvement with consistent treatments. House Bill 929 and Senate Bill 854, which I went to help testify for, which were put forward by Delegate William Wyville and Senator Paul Quarterman, respectively, were signed by Governor Moore on May 9th, 2024. This bill guarantees permanent funding from the state of Maryland each fiscal year, which has been a problem in the past with the state of Maryland Department of Agriculture budget. The county and municipalities will still have to pay the 50% portion from county funds. Monthly controlled treatments of the Potomac River from mid-April through mid-November is optimal. Treatments have not been performed regularly throughout the pandemic by the Maryland Department of Agriculture due to budget cuts. And since there was no funding in FY24, no treatments have taken place since May 23rd or May of 23. It is imperative the treatments are completed to all affected areas to see improvement in the quality of outdoor life for Southern Washington County residents. The black fly population seems to have increased with less consistency of treatments, and some areas are much worse than others. It is once again difficult to be outside. Requested funding for FY25 would be an additional $37,500 and maybe a maximum of $112,500. The reason for the difference in that number is I found out through the Maryland Department of Agriculture that the treatments were really only taking place between Brunswick and Harpers Ferry. Williamsport was treated many years ago, but they stopped for some reason and nobody seems to be able to explain it. There's been several program managers. The costs have gone up a bit, and the last years that I had to use to make an average on what they cost, because it's due to the water flow in the river, how much they cost, was in FY23. And those cost $70,000. And that was the Washington County portion. So I'm coming before you today asking for the budget to be increased for that program so that we can get a decent quality of life in our local area again. Thank you very much.
Dale Williams, and on deck is Curtis Charette.
Okay.
Good evening.
My name's Dale Williams, and I'm a lifelong resident of Washington County, except for my military service during the Vietnam War. When I was assigned a completed mission, failure was not an option. In your mission, you can't fail the county either. I have years of experience with labor relations, contract negotiations, grievance settlements. There are always three sides to every story. Somewhere in the middle is the truth. For the last 2 years, I've been substituting in the Washington County school system. Both my children are teachers, and I have 2 grandchildren in the system. This topic is far too important to our youth, these young Americans and their futures, to play games with. I trust Dr. Svine and the members of the Board of Education have prepared a budget which is not a wish list, but rather based on what they believe accurately represents their prioritized needs. I was told by Dr. Svine in an email, quote, Washington County Public Schools has experienced more than a decade of receiving only the legally required level of funding with slightly additional funding in occasional years. From our review of the county budget in the last several years, county revenues are increasing, but the school system portion of the budget has decreased, close quote. Therefore, priorities for next year are salary compensation to attract and retain staff, safety and security, mental health, behavioral support. 3, meeting the requirements of Blueprint for Maryland and combating inflation. I watched the county commissioners meeting on the 12th of March, and Commissioner Harvey stated his frustration with the budget process. He stated, school system employees expected a wage increase this year. When the budget request was not fully funded, the superintendent and the majority of the board decided they would fund everything except the raises were left out. From Commissioner Harvey's perspective, the Board of Education was trying to shift the blame to county commissioners. If you're here tonight or you're watching, the county commissioners do not tell the Board of Education how to spend their funds or any other, part of the county budget. There's a real good chance that the funding for the Blueprint for Maryland, those funds are going to run short from Annapolis. The county's going to be expected to make them up. Okay? Paul Quarterman, our representative in Annapolis, has told me as much. You might as well expect that. Commissioner Barr, On the same March 12th meeting, you stated, and I quote, "More emphasis needs to be placed on addressing behavioral problems by students. In some cases, students arrive at school with a lack of parental guidance. I would like to give more money if it is going for the well-being of students and teachers," close quote. As a 2-year substitute, I have seen teachers physically injured, disrespected, cursed at, all the while having to deal with disruptive behaviors at the elementary and secondary school levels. In far too many cases, contacting parents of students demonstrating behavioral problems is met with a lack of belief, lack of support, and in some cases, a first response of, "You better not have touched my child." Or, "You're the teacher, you should be able to control him or her." In closing, let me just say this. Please fund the school board budget at the level so you can honestly say you did your best. If you have additional funds that you can put towards mental health and behavioral, please do that. And as far as the board is concerned, Dr. Svine, spend the money on your listed priorities for next year. This is not about numbers on paper, gentlemen. This is about our future. These young Americans that I'm blessed to substitute, they are what this is about. The kids, you know? Thank you.
Curtis Surratt, and on deck is Ed Lowe.
Somebody already had a conversation with before, so I'm not going to really go too much into it right now, but thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Ed Lowe and Amy Olek's on deck.
May I have his time, please? Just kidding.
That's
There we go. Esteemed commissioners, friends, and colleagues, my name is Ed Lowe. I'm the current president of the board of directors of the Commission on Aging. I stand before you today with a profound sense of urgency and concern. Our organization is at a critical juncture, facing daunting funding challenges that threaten our ability to fulfill our mission of serving seniors, caregivers, and individuals with disabilities in our community. So I got to be forthright about the harsh reality we confront if our budget is not met in full. Without sufficient support, we will be compelled to make severe cuts that will directly impact the lives of those we are dedicated to serving. More than 70 clients who depend on essential services like Meals on Wheels and congregate meals will be deprived of the nourishment they require for their well-being. This number will likely double if the board of directors does not vote to support the use of net assets in this year's budget as well. Additionally, we are forced to eliminate positions. Wait lists for crucial services will lengthen dramatically, with wait times stretching, which are currently 4 months, to an intolerable 6 to 8 months. Seniors, caregivers, and individuals with disabilities will be left without timely access to the support and assistance they urgently need to maintain their quality of life. We have continued our fundraising efforts as requested by your predecessors. However, your budget presentation this evening has the potential to negatively impact our efforts, as we are currently in the middle of a fundraising effort right now through now at the end of May to raise $50,000 specifically to be used for Meals on Wheels. I would ask that if you would look at the budget on page 21 and page 18, you will see a graph on page 18, and on page 21, you will notice that it shows that the percentage of change is 50.73% for the Commission on Aging. I asked 6 community leaders to review this budget. And I asked them one question. After you review each page of this budget, would you please get in touch with me and tell me what you think the Commission on Aging increase is from the county this year in funds? 5 of the 6 said it's 50%, $540,000. Congratulations, you did a great job. And I had to reply to them, that's not correct. In fact, of that $540,000, which I wish was actually the number on page 18 rather than just the graph with an orange and blue line, that number is $433,597 of in-kind money. If you take that and you subtract that from the $540,050, you get $106,453, which in fact is a 10% increase in our funds, which is the actual cash money increase that we receive. And that is misleading to our community. So I would ask that you would consider that seniors are the voting backbone of our community, and it is time for us to advocate, all of us to advocate for their needs. Thank you very much.
Amy Olak, and next up after is Billy Woods.
Hello, County Commissioners. I'm Amy Olak, the CEO of the Commission on Aging, and I have been before you for an entire decade requesting the same thing every year for the underserved seniors, caregivers, and those with disabilities. In that decade, we have served an increase of 168% of community citizens here in Washington County. We have found in the last year over $1 million in benefits, which is a great return on investment for the money we receive from the county. I want to share with you tonight, on behalf of those that are not able to be with us because they are homebound, the ramifications of underfunding the Commission on Aging's budget. It will certainly affect the tireless staff who work to serve those individuals. The challenges were faced by state laws and mandates that impact human resource operations, as you know, not just minimum wage, but the new increases and expectations around the exempt staff. Moreover, the recent termination of contract with Meritus Health exacerbates the financial strain of the organizations, which eliminates critical positions. The landscape of grant funding has dramatically shifted, mandating match requirements for many of the grants that were normally available for reimbursement purposes. These are grants that will actually eliminate positions like our Elder Abuse Victims Advocate, which are of urgent need for their services. We understand the financial constraints that the county faces. We too are in that same boat with the depletion of the American Rescue Funds come September and the changes in the one-time county funds. The Older Americans Act final rule changes and the requirements that the state put in place for the new dementia care program, which starts in July, will further strain our services and programs. But we're obligated as your area agency on aging to provide the core Older Americans Act programs and deliver them in an equitable manner to those that need them most. No individual should endure the long wait lists of over 6 months. There are over 500 individuals waiting today as I speak before you. And we've talked about the need for a plan for this growing population of seniors. Today, over 11,000 individuals are celebrating their 65th birthday, and that will continue to grow. You know, all of these 500 people on our wait list have a name and a face, and they're a relative or a neighbor or a friend of someone you know. The demand for our services has never been greater. The consequences of this underfunding are dire. There is no individual that should be left behind or to go hungry. Commissioners, we rely on your support to ensure that no one is left behind, regardless of their age. It's time for action now. No community member should wait or wonder or worry where their next meal will come from or whether their vote has made a difference. Support your seniors and please stand behind your area agency on aging. Thank you.
Okay. Next is Billy Woods, and on deck is Mark Kopp.
Good evening. My name is Billy Woods, and as Vice President of the International Association of Firefighters Local 1605, I represent the dedicated men and women of the Division of Emergency Services. It's with a profound sense of concern that I address the decisions made regarding the county budget, particularly in relation to DES and its need for adequate, proficient, and supported service delivery. Despite our earnest efforts and impassioned pleas, the vast majority of DES requests have been slashed from the budget, leaving Local 1605 members grappling with a reality that undermines the very fabric of safety and security in Washington County. While I acknowledge that base funding did increase, our struggle to maintain adequate staffing levels extended beyond the confines of the existing budget. Even outside of DES, these challenges reverberate through the corporations. Excuse my voice here. Sorry, I lost my spot there. Affecting both paid and volunteer staff. This is and has been causing a haunting disruption to service delivery, protection, and jeopardizes the safety of our citizens, visitors, and families. The stark truth is that our current staffing level fall egregiously below the minimum NFPA requirements necessary to fulfill our basic operational responsibilities. Deficiency not only risks the safety of DS employees and the volunteer paid corporation staff, but also poses a grave risk to the general public across Washington County. There's been a continuous request for DS staff to assist, maintain, and provide service delivery across the county at multiple stations. Yet we are having extreme difficulty in ensuring full coverage of our own DES full-time assigned stations. The request to expand continue every day, yet funding these critical positions is nowhere to be found. What are we doing if we can't protect and ensure our citizens, families, and loved ones a guaranteed response or mode of most need? Even as emergency call volume continues to escalate in instance growing complexity, we find our county losing personnel without replacement. Recent wildfire responses underscore the pressing need for robust staffing and resources, yet we find ourselves woefully unprepared to meet these challenges head on. We have seen the results of understaffed agencies globally. We cannot afford or bear the thought of an accident, injury, or life loss simply because we are understaffed, not with the correct resources, equipment, or needs to uphold the promise of public safety. Moreover, the absence of a common authority structure, established funding mechanisms, and reliable staffing exposes many fire and rescue programs to unacceptable levels of liability. Yet we continue to fund outside organizations with minimal checks and balances under the county government's watch, and local 1605 members bear the burden to pick up pieces and ensure the system moves forward. Consider, for instance, the alarming uncertainty surrounding emergency response to this very building. In the event of a fire and other crisis, we lack the assurance of a prompt and adequate response. This building lies in the first response of a volunteer fire company and a separate volunteer EMS company. If someone were to suffer a medical emergency cardiac arrest, the closest guaranteed staffing is 12 minutes away. If we're fortunate, the volunteer company may respond, which they'd be about 5 minutes away. Your brain has 4 minutes of oxygen reserves. The likelihood of surviving is near impossible without immediate intervention. Quite simply, with current funding, we aren't meeting the needs of the citizens. Due to the financial structure and staffing limitations, in 2024, this is not okay. This is not safe. This is not appropriate. In conclusion, I thank you for your consideration and your attention and the future needs of DES and the citizens.
Mark Kopp, and on deck is Tim Fisher.
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for your time to speak this evening. My name is Mark Kopp, and I'm a citizen of the Fair Play community and a member of the local 1605 of the International Association of Firefighters. Has recently taken on a career position in being in public safety for 39 years. It is disheartening to see that the DES staffing cuts that have taken place as a result of recent budget cuts. Although I understand there are many groups here that need the money and the funding, public safety should be our utmost importance within Washington County. The staffing shortages, as Mr. Woods spoke before me, it happens every day. And we're a growing system. We're a growing system that's supported by volunteers and career staffing. In Washington County, only 16 to 18% of the citizens provide to the volunteer fire service. Yet 100% of the 100% of the volunteers respond on a daily basis, along with career staffing, to answer 100% of the calls within Washington County. That leaves 84% of the population that's not contributing to EMS and fire services. We sit right before the Westfields community where there's 780 homes, yet we receive less than 2% of the donations to the fire company. June 29, 2021, we had a near fatal experience here in Washington County. The Carter Lane report indicated, after the response of several experts within the fire service, that there was several needs that needed to take place within Washington County's fire service. It was titled on the report, "We owe it to the firefighters and everyone to make sure that that day does not repeat itself, as history often does. We owe it to every firefighter and emergency service personnel to have adequate staffing to ensure that the emergency calls are handled and that they return home safely." I never thought I would ever see so many people ask for you to increase taxes in this county. And I think it's apparent that it's time that a tax is added to Washington County so that adequate public safety is provided for every citizen of Washington County and not those select few. Thank you.
Okay. Tim Fisher, and on deck is Dr. David Svine.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's great to be here with you in this amazing building. I want to start out by saying that Billy Graham, in one of his last books, said, "I was always prepared to die. I was not prepared to grow old." I offer that quote to you as a substantive example of how even the best of us are not always prepared to grow old. I am the CEO of the Community Action Council, the anti-poverty agency in Washington County. I am a pastor of Covenant Life Church here in Washington County and an adjunct sociology professor at HCC. I'm proud of all of those things, but I stand here before you tonight as a father of a 15-year-old daughter who thinks she's 42, and a son of an 81-year-old mother. I'm a firm believer that children and seniors are the bookends of our community. I'm also a firm believer that if we're not doing all that we can for our children and our seniors on those bookends, that the story in between those ends will not be a great story. And so I would like to encourage you. In my role at the Community Action Council, I am seeing an alarming rate of increase in homelessness, especially among the senior population. And whether we are talking about food or transportation or a housing crisis here in our county, all of those issues touch our seniors. The psalmist said in Psalm 71, verse 9, he offered a prayer. I offer it to you in part tonight. He said, "Do not cast me away in my old age, and do not forget about me when my strength is gone." I offer that to you tonight. Please, do not forget about our seniors in their old age, and do not cast them away when their strength is gone. Our children and our seniors need your help. I beseech you to find ways, no matter what the apparatus or paradigm, to serve these communities in a more rigorous way. Thank you.
Dr. David Svine, and on deck is Mary Haringa.
Good evening, President Barr, members of the Board of County Commissioners, and Mrs. Gordon. First, I appreciate the change in your budget schedule this cycle. It means a lot to have the commissioners hear our Board of Education's budget request before receiving staff's recommended county budget. Thank you for making this adjustment to fully consider our school system's funding priorities. I would also like to acknowledge the county administrator's recognition of the cost to do business, specifically with regards to inflation. This is also the first time in several years that the county is proposing to fund the school system above maintenance of effort, with $1 million above the required level. Thank you for that. I ask that you reconsider the base for calculating your 3% inflation factor, though, basing it instead on the FY24 allocation of $109 million. This change would create an additional $3.2 million for schools. If you take a moment to reflect on my initial draft budget, you may recall that in my presentation, I mentioned there were over $16 million in true needs that were not included. Then we received the governor's budget, which forced us to make some very hard decisions and cut nearly $3 million. Again, we're cutting $3 million when we already have $16 million in needs we didn't even put on the table. I know you recognize that the Board of Education's now approved FY25 budget has staff compensation and salaries as the highest priority. The school system's $9.67 million ask is a reasonable request to keep our 3,000 plus employees competitive regarding salaries and compensation. Our community cannot afford to lose our valuable educators, staff, and school leaders. Our Board of County Commissioners values the importance of local control. For that reason, I want to revisit some very conservative figures that we've shared with the commissioners and the county administrator. I'm referring to funding projections from the Department of Legislative Services. Under the requirements for the blueprint, Washington County government will be required to fund the schools at substantially higher levels in FY26 and 27. Fully funding the Board of Education's budget this year will help bridge the investment for those future years. Looking at the blueprint requirements and conservative DLS figures, I urge you to fully fund the Board of Education's request of $9.6 million. You can reduce local funding requirements over the next 2 fiscal years and maintain local control. I do believe the approach of making incremental increases that factor in inflation and the cost to do business and going above the maintenance of effort is a wise investment for our community moving forward. Thank you.
Next is Mary Haruga, and on deck is Carol Mallon.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mary Haringa, and you have heard from me many times over the past year at Commissioner meetings regarding funding for the Washington County Public Schools. I've spoken as a representative of the Washington County Teachers Association and as a parent of a 5th grader. I've made comments about your willingness to make mid-year budget adjustments for salaries for the county employees, but not for the Washington County Public Schools. When you have said WCPS could have given a bigger salary increase last year if it really wanted to, I asked at the cost of what programs? I have shown how the percentage of the county budget that goes to our public schools has continued to decrease each year. I've talked about the needs of the students in Washington County, and I have listened while teachers have spoken about those needs and the challenges they are facing. So I'm asking you one more time to please do what can be done and what should be done and provide full funding to Washington County Public Schools. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Carol Mallon, President of the Washington County Teachers Association. When I provided public comments to you in March and April, I shared with you my hope that the county's draft budget would indicate a change in allocation for the Board of Education. I'm before you again to ask you again, your proposed allocation does not provide adequate funding to meet the needs of the Washington County Public Schools. Economists have noted that we are not in the predicted recession that some thought would have happened this year. Given that fact, as well as the historic underprojections of county revenues in recent years, this Board of Commissioners can make the choice to do more for this county's students, teachers, and schools. And if you restore the income tax rate of prior years, you could access a state disparity grant and provide needed increases to the school system, the Commission on Aging, and other county agencies as well. This budget includes adjustments to county government salary scales to provide needed increases to make salaries competitive. The Board of Education needs an increased allocation to do the same. We cannot fill vacant educational support employees' jobs, and in the face of an increasing teacher shortage, we are not offering adequate compensation to our mid-career professionals. Some are opting to leave for jobs in other school systems, either in Maryland or in Pennsylvania, or to leave education altogether to work in professions that reward them appropriately for their educational attainment and years of experience. You have access to resources if you choose to look at your past practices, future projections, and choices that have been made by past commissioners. Thank you for providing the support you have given to WCPS. And once again, I implore you to find it in your hearts to step up your commitment and meet this moment with a new era of support for Washington County students and schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. With that, that's the last sign-in that I have on my sheet. Has there been any additional sign-in?
No additional.
No additional? With that, I do believe this concludes our public hearing this evening. Again, thank you for your participation. And on behalf of my fellow commissioners, we'd like to thank everyone for their time, their participation, and the courtesy and professionalism that has been shown here this evening. And please be safe and drive carefully. Thank you very much.